Alright folks, how's it going? In the shed, doing a bit of crafting again. Now, this is just answering some of you guys, or some of you folks' suggestions. Some of you in the video where I literally just mocked up this pouch to obviously just go over my, just so that I can hang around my neck to house the pocket bellows and the additional what I did there as well, the additional I found, knocking around in the shed, I found a double-edged pencil, a double-sized pencil sharpener. So again, it's quite handy for obviously for making wood shavings and stuff like that if you want to be a bit lazy. So anyway, so I literally just knock up this little setup here just so that I could carry it around my neck. Yeah. Now, I didn't go out and buy any materials. This is just materials that I had laying around in the shed. So what I'm going to do, something really simple. I'm not going to go through the whole process of making this, okay? But what I'm going to do is, now, if I was just going to make a simple pouch that's going to house, say, just the bellows on their own, if we for example look at my my little case, if you like, that houses my glasses, all right, and that really is just an old piece of old it's an old pair of trousers I used to wear when I used to go out doing a lot more air rifle shooting, and the trousers, actually, whether they shrunk or I got taller, I don't know, but in the end I couldn't really wear them anymore. They were too baggy. Maybe I'd lost some weight. And then what I then did, I then had material to obviously utilise for whatever, and I made a scope sock. I made loads of different bits and pieces from the air rifle and such like. But obviously I've got the glasses case as well. And then obviously what I did was I just put a bit of paracord around there, and it literally, I mean, I use this every day. This is most I wear it at work and whatever. It's always round my neck, and my glasses most of the time are obviously tucked away in that pouch. All right, so digressing ever so slightly, so what I'm going to do is rather than make this complete pouch here with the buckle on it and everything else, what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you just a real simple little simple progress or another project, if you like, of basically by just making, if you did have a set of pocket bellows and you're in a similar situation as me, is that you stick them in the pocket. Sometimes you can mislay them and such like, and if you're using them quite a lot, especially when you're firelighting and things like that, or maybe drinking a bottle of gin, for who knows, and such. Oh my god, got a gusto of like smoky taste up there. But what I simply am going to do is just use a piece of seatbelt material, and I'm going to make a very simple little pocket pouch that can house the pocket bellows on their own. All right, so stay tuned for another hopefully interesting and educational video. Just stick the bellows down for a minute. So here at the moment is kind of, because I keep all this kind of stuff out in my shed, this is kind of like it's one of Dave Fry's bags, and I have used it to house, other bits of kit. But at the moment, what I'm doing is, because I'm sort of grabbing bits out of the shed, putting them in this bag, and then I'm ferrying them into the house to carry out a project. All right, so at the moment, a lot of my sewing gear is in here. All right, now when I go through some of this gear that's in here, folks, I am no expert when it comes to sewing, when it comes to choosing the gauges of needles and things like that. Obviously, when I look at needles, I want to ensure that they're not too thick, not too blunt, obviously depending on, the sort of what you're trying to penetrate material wise. If I'm going to use leather, I might incorporate an awl as well, just to sort of like help with the holes. Sometimes I've got needles that are sharp enough to just penetrate the leather, but also, getting to my age now, and I'm still a young 51, but what I'm finding as well now is that sometimes it's actually threading the needles, and what I tend to find is that I'm using reasonably thicker thread or a cotton, simply because you want it to obviously give it, you want a little bit more of in my head anyway, in my way of thinking, you want just a little bit more strength and a bit more, you know, bit more sort of resilience there, as opposed to some real sort of thin cotton-like materials. So with that in mind, normally when I'm choosing needles as well now, I try and get the ones where, you know, at least it's a little bit easier to actually obviously thread the needles as well. But having said that, I do actually sometimes use needles where the eyes are maybe just too slight, and then I'll apply a thicker bit of you know, use a thicker bit of you know, thread or whatever to go through that needle, and then I'll sort of fumble around to actually pull it through, and so on and so forth. All right, so anyway, so let's have a look in here then, what I've actually, you know, what I've got in here. So I've got a hole punch, yeah. This is just a sewing kit that I have, that I used to carry around in my rucksack, and again, it's just made by me. You know, it's just a little piece of upholstery leather, all right, a little bit of draw cord through there, and then what I've got is a little set of scissors, okay, and then I've got some cotton, which actually I use this to actually sew up the edges to make this one. All right, so I've got some black. This was actually used, this was old thread that they used to use on footwear in one of the local shoe factories that was close to me, and I managed to accumulate some of it many years ago, and then I obviously just wrapped it round in a bit of card, and there's a series of needles there, and I've got some safety pins to accompany the set of scissors there if I maybe need to repair something when I'm out and about. But I don't tend to take this one out as much as I used to, so kind of what I'm doing at the moment is kind of you know, kind of just going in there and taking scraps off of it to use for other little projects. This is my my attempt at making a sort of like one of those Sami sort of kind of kits there, with a simple cord lock on there, a little bit of antler. Obviously the antler's been hollowed out, pull it through there, and then I've got a couple of needles in there, and they've got slightly thicker bits of cotton that I do sometimes stick in the old rucksack to take with me, because it's quite a natty bit of kit there. I think the old Sami people used to actually have it attached onto their belt. All right, and then as I say, I've got other bits of material in now. You know, this is just like a little resealable bag where I've put, you know, buckles in there and such like, if there's a project that I want to make. These are sort of like just like old bits of you know, like elastic, like the shock cord, and it's got them sort of the clamps on there that obviously just stops it from sort of moving around quite so easy. Another buckle here that was off an old rucksack, and so on and so forth. I've even got some leather in there and all the rest of it. So, but for this particular project, what I'm going to do is I'm literally going to, one more thing I'll quickly show you is this is kind of what I use just to house all my needles in. And as I say, I've got some needles in now. I don't know if the camera picks it up, but the eyelets on some of them are obviously a little bit thicker than others, and I literally, as I say, house the needles in there, so that when I need to use them on the next project. So for this one, we're going to just take a little, we're going to use a length, we might get away with this piece, we're going to make a simple pouch using a little bit of seat belt. Now my friend of mine, their son, he works on cars and everything else. He gets the scrap cars and all the rest of it, and every now and again I ask him, can you get hold of us to cut seat belts, and when they're totally getting rid of the vehicles and all the rest of it, he'll give me some seat belt material. So it's obviously quite a handy free material to get hold of. Even you go down to the scrap yard, I'm sure if you just went in there and cut the lengths off, I'm sure it wouldn't cost you nothing. It might even be, I've got no idea whether or not it works out cheaper to get it from a scrap yard or to get it, you know, to buy some decent material from a proper supplier. But again, that's up to you. You do your homework when it comes to that one. All right, but for me, for this purpose of this video, I'm really going to be just using something simple like a piece of seat belt. One, because it's really forgiving. You can get away with a lot of, you know, needles you use, you know, very simple. It's very easy to sew. And then I'll just use, kind of depending on how fancy I want it to look. I mean, even if your sewing skills are not that good, and believe me, mine ain't fantastic, but as long as you're sort of, you know, you sort of wrap it around quite a lot, and you don't really, well, apart from sort of like, you know, on that pouch there, you can see some of the, you know, some of the thread there, but I've obviously just made it quite tight around the edges and all the rest of it, just to sort of make it a little bit more fancy. Now, going back to this pouch, when I actually put these bits on here just to extend it out a little bit more, all I use for that was a piece of this. This was some other strapping. I think these were off of an old when I bought something like a roof rack. I might have bought an old roof rack from somewhere, and these were the straps that you sometimes get free with them, and they weren't needed anymore on an old vehicle. So what I've done, I literally kept one of these, you know, keep all the straps, and then what I've done was I actually cut it down the middle to the length that I wanted. And then I was able then to obviously sew it on one side and then sew it on the other. It was really nothing special about it at all. Okay, I literally sewed it there, and then it's given me that little bit more of an you know, sort of more of an extended pocket on the inside, if you like, rather than having it as tight as what it would be on the one that we're going to make now. But again, that would be up to you as an individual. Right, so let's crack on then with the actual with the sewing and such like. So I'm just going to sort out the needle. I'll do that off camera, and then we'll go through the process of obviously just making one. So this needle already had a bit of, already had a bit of thread in there. So what I'll do now is I'll literally just do a simple overhand knot on the end there, so that when I do make that first stitch, it just kind of, once you pull it through, if you pull it through quite gently, obviously it will stop the other end of the thread from coming out. So now we need to work out how long we're going to want this this sort of pouch. As I say, I've just used a piece of scrap material here. So what I'm going to basically do is look at, I mean, when you cut it, it will have that slightly sort of frayed end on there. Okay, so what we can do is, what I will do actually is I'm going to use the set of rollers. These are actually quite a good bit of kit to use, especially if you're using when I sort of band up catapults and stuff like that. Normally I use one of these as opposed to a pair of scissors, because these old circular blades, you can get it nice and straight with the edge of a metal ruler. So I'm not going to bother with the cutting board. I'm literally just going to go across there like now, just to take off that excess. Oh, that's still moving it. Okay, and then once we've got that like that, that's just a little stray fray there. Then what I'll do is I can get a lighter or a candle or whatever, and literally just run it across it, just so that you create like a bit of a heat seal. All right, give it a little bit of a press, and then you create that, and it just stops it from fraying really. Yeah. Right, so once we've done that, get rid of that bit of scrap bit there. So okay, so right, I'm going to have that bit as my sort of, it's sort of naturally curling that way. It doesn't really matter. So then what I'm going to do is I'm just going to take it up to about there. Now obviously understand, I mean, the reason why I obviously put a little bit on there, or the little bit on the side as well, was simply because of having the pencil sharpener, and if I want to stick anything in there as well. But obviously you need to kind of give yourself a little bit of an idea on how tight that pouch is going to be when you actually got it in there. So you need to do a little bit of sort of working out first. I reckon that once I've got that sewn, that'll be sweet like that anyway. So I'll probably take it up just a little bit more, probably something like there. Okay, so then it's enough. Even if I've got gloved hands, I can then at least be able to pull the bellows out. So I'm going to take that out and rest it like there. You know, folks, this is just rough. I'm not like, you know, as I say, I'm not an upholsterist or an expert or anything like that. And then once I've got it roughly worked out, then what I'll do is I'll get my needle and cotton on the first one. Okay, and then I'll literally start sewing. This is for all you humble people that don't have sewing machines, like some of my buddies do, like Mac Tightwad and David Fryers and such like. And then you're just going to pull it till it obviously takes up that knot there, and then go over the top again. Don't know what this thread's called, don't know what this type of thread formation is. So I'm literally now just going to carry on running the thread all the way down. Okay, so I'll come back to you in a minute. Right, so I've nearly gone down to the bottom on the first one. Now you haven't really, just, you know, what you can do is totally up to you individually how you do it. Now you can take it all the way down to the bottom and do it up, but what I like to do, if I'm doing a simple little pouch like this, I don't know why, but I think it gives it a tiny bit of space at the bottom there. So what I'll do is I'll probably take it down to about there, give it one more overlap, and then what I'll do is I'll kind of go over it again in the same spot once or maybe twice, just to give it that little bit of strength there on the end of the thread where you've done it. Yeah, so if we push it in, you can see it's still got, you know, it's still got quite a bit of strength there. And then what I'll do is I'll just take it up just to run off some of the excess of the thread. I mean, you know, you can be as fancy as you like with it. You can put blanket stitches into it and all the rest of it, but I'm just literally using just an overhand, just sort of an over the top sort of loop there, and then I'll finish it off one more in the same spot again. Look, be careful there, because obviously you don't want, when you start getting to the end of your cotton, you find yourself sometimes fighting with a needle. Okay, that'll do, and then we'll cut off the excess there. You can get a lighter on there if you really want, but I won't. I'll leave that as it is. And then before I even sew up the other side, what I'll do is just make sure that the depth of the pouch is okay. And then what I can do is then I can repeat the process on the other side. So you can see it starting to form already, quite nice. All right, quite simple really. All right, so I'll come back to you in a minute when I've re-threaded the needle and sewn up the other side. One thing I will quickly say is, obviously, you know, you've obviously got to sew up that length of you know, you've got to sew up that side of material. So you need to obviously be careful, you know, sort of be careful not to cut it too short. You know, maybe I'm preaching, you know, sort of like quite a simple, you know, sort of common sense there. But what I tend to do is I always cut it as, you know, there might be upholsterers out there that, or, you know, people that are expert sewers that will tell me you only need to do it maybe 2 or 3 times the length or whatever, depending on what sort of you know, on, you know, whether or not you want to reduce your wastage and such like. But because obviously I'll be doing other bits, I'll leave it this length, and then obviously and then you know, I'll use the excess to do the last bits that I'll show you. Right, the previous needle that I was using, I'm struggling out here to get the thread into the eyelet. I can see it, but it's obviously just a little bit too thick for the eyelet. So what I've done is I've just gone up a needle, or I've gone up to a different size needle, and it's obviously one that can obviously take the cotton very well. But the only thing obviously is then that you need to be just aware of the kind of hole diameter that you're going to obviously that might sort of appear in your material. Now, I mean, because this material is what it is, I shouldn't really have much of an issue with regards to it looking, you know, with massive holes in it and stuff like that. So I'll just carry on. If I pull the first one through, it isn't going to take the knot all the way through, and then just from there I'll run that for a couple of times. Oh, need to be careful of that as well. Okay, and then we can carry on stitching it down the other side, so I'll report back when it's done. So as you can see now, we're almost getting to the end, and I'm actually quite chuffed with that sewing, considering I'm just using my naked eye and my hand. I don't actually think that's come out too bad. Yeah, that's pretty good. Probably a little bit more presentable than that side, but you know, at the end of the day, it's going to be tucked down the front of my jacket, and I'm not selling them to people. You know, maybe if I was selling them, then obviously you take a lot more effort, but for just something that, you know, you're knocking up for yourself out of a piece of old recycled material, you know, you can make it as fancy as you like. It's down to you as the individual. So now I'm just finishing off with that, just putting a couple of 2 or 3 stitches overlapping in there, and then I'm just going to run that stitch up there a couple of times. One more. Cut that excess off there with the scissors. Okay, if I wanted to, I could burn that off. And So there's the first part of it done. Lovely jubbly, ain't come out too sad, is it? Now what I'll do is I'll get the lighter and wear that little bit of, I'll actually give that all a little bit of a burn, just to finish it off a bit. Okay. Right. So they're obviously housed in there quite well now. Now if I was going to be sort of, you know, if I wanted to be a little bit more fancy with it, if I wanted to put a buckle over there and, you know, like I did with this one, what I would do is I wouldn't stitch up this, I'd do the stitching in the middle first, and the same with the buckle bit up here. I'd do all that first before I actually put the sides on. So I do all that bit first in the middle. But because for the purpose of this video we're only going really simple of having something that's going to go around your neck. Now what you could do is you could either obviously take it off and either sew it, something like that. You could, if you really wanted to, you could sew it sort of, you know, with the excess sort of there, and then you could have it where it goes on your belt if you really wanted to, and then that can then obviously sit in there. Or, you know, for this instance, because we're going to be doing it over around our neck, you can obviously do it that way, you know, literally just, you know, sort of maybe just go past there a little bit, sew there, and then what I would do is I'd bring it across and just sew it across there. Or you can do it literally by, you know, there's a number of ways you can do it. Or another way to do it is basically just to have it quite small, cut your excess material off, and then you might want to have it where you put a cut, you know, where you stitch it across there, and then obviously enough for you to be able to put a piece of paracord or the cordage of your choice. Alright, so I think what I'll do is, just to keep it sort of the way it is, what I'll do now is I'll cut it off there, move them bits out of the way, cut it off somewhere about there. Try and stop it from moving this time. Okay, something like that. And then again, you just, you know, you're going to do a little burn there just to stop it from fraying. Give that a little bit of a press. Right, and then I've got the option to either go over the top there. Okay, but sometimes what I tend to do really is I like it on the outside, because if, you know, what you do put in there might occasionally catch on it or whatever. So what we're going to do now then, we're going to fold that over, and we obviously want to create a little bit of an effect there. Let's get a bit of paracord out. So obviously our paracord, for example, this flame colour will go under there like so. And then what I will do, I'll now go through the process of just stitching across there. So while it's like that, okay, I'll get my needle and cotton, put a knot in it. Alright, okay, so I know now that my paracord, let's just put the paracord in there just for effect for a minute. Oh, pardon. And then what I'll do is I'm just going to obviously keep it just slightly bigger. And I'm just going to put my stitch in there, and I'm going to basically create the same sort of side stitch as I did on the first part. Okay, so as you can see now, that's just a little bit of excess cotton there. We'll take that off, so to avoid any confusion. Alright, so we've taken it down there. So what I'm going to do now is I'm literally going to run the stitch across the pouch, or across the flap, whatever, obviously avoiding getting the inside of there. So that's what we can do then, is just leaving it like so. No, let's take that out now, it doesn't really matter too much. We know we've gauged it on that side, it's not a problem. Typical, there's a knot in that side. So we can take that out. And then what we're going to do now is basically, with our needle and cotton continued, we literally will run like a running stitch, I suppose they call it, possibly. It goes through the other side there, yeah, and we'll just do it horizontally right across, just to sort of keep it tidy. Right. So we've taken it across there, and now we're just going to go through the process of finishing it. We should have just enough thread, I'm hoping, to be able to just finish off the bit. Kind of get an idea. It literally just goes up a couple more bits. I reckon about there. So what we'll do there then, we'll stop it there, put a couple of the little stitches there just to double it up. And obviously using needles with a slightly bigger eye, especially, you know, it makes it damn sight easier with the, you know, with the thread that you're using. Okay, so we literally will now just go through there. I don't know how many I did then, so we'll just do it once more. You could, if you wanted, run it back through there as well, totally up to you. I think you'll probably have enough strength in it, you know, where it is there. You know, you're not hanging an anvil off it or anything like that. Cut the excess off. And then voila folks, there you go. So if we sort of just, again, just for purpose of the video, stick that bit of paracord through there, and then there you go. Alright folks, so there it is. So we've got a nice simple, you know, obviously there's not enough cord on there for it to go around my neck, but there you go, a nice simple sort of, you know, a pouch, whatever. Even if you want to make one to put a lighter in, if you want to make it slightly wider to put a lighter, and maybe you know, maybe a set of bellows in, whatever, it's totally up to you. Well, I hope you like that video. I've got no idea what it'll be like time wise, you know. Obviously there's a bit of crafting, it's a little bit out of the ordinary for me to do something like this, but it's kind of, some people have asked about it, suggested that I do a video, so obviously I am doing. Alright, so I hope you enjoyed that. I hope you found it quite informative. As I say, I'm not an expert when it comes to you know, needle and thread and all that sort of stuff, but it is just a bit of fun for me. Okay, and it's nice just to craft up your own little bits and pieces, and there's some magnificent people out there that make some magnificent stuff. Alright, so thanks for watching folks. Alright, don't forget to check the description, hit that subscribe button. Alright, and I'll see you on the next video. Take care and stay safe.